afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to a webinar on intermodal transport and regional connectivity. My name is Manish Khurana and I'm the Senior Manager of Business Development at EUROCONTROL. I'll be your moderator for this webinar. Now, mobility is an enabler of our economic and social life. As the second largest area of expenditure for European households, the transport sector contributes 5% to European GDP and directly employs 10 million workers, says the European Commission. Metropolitan cities suffer from traffic congestions, causing disruption to delivery of critical public services, polluting the environment, impacting lives of citizens, and reducing efficiency of business operations. Now, by far, the most serious challenge facing the transport sector is to significantly reduce its emissions and become more sustainable. We all face it on a daily basis. Current COVID crisis has emphasized the need to safeguard a well-functioning single market in EU. Efficient transportation is key. It's key to ensuring continued movement of people and goods in crisis times today and in future. Now, we all think that different modes of transport need to complement rather than compete with each other. A recently published think paper by EUROCONTROL titled Plane and Train, Getting the Balance Right emphasizes this argument. If you've not had a chance to read this paper, please download it from our website or just go to the chat window and my colleagues have provided a link there. You can download it from there. In this webinar, we will discuss these issues and we'll explore some key questions. How can intermodal transport contribute to achieving European Commission's smart and sustainability strategy? How do we connect Europe with modern, multimodal and safe transport infrastructure networks, shifting towards low emission mobility? And how do we connect the application sectors to create an ecosystem for mobility services in an intermodal world and shorten the go-to-market time? What role will an airport play, optimizing door-to-door journey to go from one to the other? And that applies to both for passengers and cargo. Now, to help me debate these issues, I'm delighted to have with me three panelists who are experts in their areas, and they're helping to address these mobility needs of the European citizens. I'll take this opportunity to introduce all of them. First one is Mr. Harold Routers. Harold is the Director of Investment, Innovation and Sustainable Transport at European Commission, DG Move. In addition, Harold is also the head of unit responsible for Trans-European Network, also called TEN-T, a role that he acquired in 2009, and he's been directly involved in developing guidelines for it. He previously worked for the same directorate in order to promote the implementation of TEN-T projects in cooperation with European coordinators and for the development of road safety policy from 1997 to 2005. And before joining the Commission, Harold held several important positions in the Netherlands, where he's actually from, and all these positions were related to transportation. Harold holds degrees from, in fact, several degrees, I must say, from Nijmegen and Amsterdam universities, and then master's degree from universities in France and also in Leuven. So a very well-connected and important person in the transportation industry. My second speaker, my second panelist is Miriam Boehme. Miriam is a project leader in urban air mobility at the city of Aachen. Miriam studied political science at the University of Bamberg in Germany and is currently pursuing a PhD in political psychology, analyzing the psychology of decision-making in planning of large infrastructure projects. So her insight into this topic is very important for us. Since 2019, Miriam manages multiple Mobility 4.0 innovation projects and acts as a coordinator of urban air mobility activities at the Department of Economy, Science, Digitization and Europe at the city of Aachen. She is responsible for coordinating efforts of the municipality to develop further use cases and demonstrations for urban air mobility and currently manages innovation projects such as SkyCab, Sapphire Med, and Accord. So welcome to you as well, Miriam. Last but not least, my third panelist is Mr. Gino Baldi. Gino is the Director of Terminal Area Operations at Marco Polo Venice Airport. As a Venice-born engineer, he's been working there for 10 years in the field of designing and building transport infrastructures. He's very keen, very motivated in designing such transportation multimodal systems connecting roads, railway stations, aerodromes, etc. He'd been working for the engineering company of Venice Airport for 7 years, where he had taken care of designing and building latest extensions of the passenger terminal. And since 2020, he's in charge of the operations at the airport. He's now in charge of Venice terminal operations, of running the airport staff in order to ensure the proper functioning of terminal inbound and outbound customer satisfaction. I'm very pleased to hear in his own biography that he's actually dedicated to improving the customer satisfaction at the airport, something we're all very close to. His current aim is to achieve modern digital management of the terminal processes by taking advantage of the IT management and forecasting tools currently available. So welcome to my panelists, and welcome you all. We're delighted to have you here. But before I hand in the floor to my first speaker, I just want to inform the audience that you can communicate with us electronically. Please use the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. And as your moderator, I'll do my absolute best to have them all, or as many as I can in the time available, to get them addressed by one of the panelists. For those who are having difficulties, technical difficulties related to Zoom, please use the chat window, or if you just want to say hello to us, we would love to receive that hello. Please do so by using the chat window. So without further ado, I would first like to invite my first speaker, that's Mr. Harold Routers, to deliver his presentation. Harold, the floor is yours.
Munish, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And it's a delight to be here with you in this session this afternoon, focusing on the decarbonization of transport, and in particular, of course, a focus on airports and connections to the links with cities and intermodality in particular. Could I have a first slide, please? I will present to you very briefly 3 slides, ladies and gentlemen. The first one, of course, linking directly to the Green Deal. When Mrs. von der Leyen took office in December 2019, she launched after 2 weeks the Green Deal. And of course, looking at transport, we have a huge task ahead of us, as transport is one of the sectors that is very difficult to decarbonize. And thereby, of course, not only thinking of any particular transport mode, all of the transport modes need to decarbonize individually and jointly in the best possible way. And in that regard, on the 9th of December 2020, 1 year after the launch of the Green Deal, the Commission adopted a new strategy for sustainable and smart mobility on the 9th of December. And that strategy is pursuing 3 elements in particular. It is trying to make sure that we have a fully sustainable transport, a smart and a resilient transport. And it is declined into 10 flagship areas with key milestones that are then translated into an action plan with 82 individual concrete policy actions. It's also complemented still by a comprehensive staff working document. But very directly going now to the, let's say, the life matter of things. In 2 days from now, the Commission will adopt on the 14th of July its first big package that is called Fit for 55, as the climate law has foreseen that we shall decarbonize by 2030 at least by 55%. And the actions will come now on the 14th of July, some 12 different, amongst which 4 for the transport sector, that are of interest to all the audience here. And we expect that there will be 2 initiatives linked to alternative fuels in the fields of aviation and maritime. 1 related to the infrastructure, and then 1 also that is directly linked to transport still for ETS, extensions for road, but also with a view on what is happening there in transport, in maritime and aviation. And this package will be certainly much debated and is very much expected. And I foresee that the co-decision will be launched very, very soon. Already this week, we will have our first, let's say, discussions with the Parliament and the Council foreseen. But I would like to address here now today, in particular, the second package that DG Move will launch by the end of the year. And one of those actions out of this 82 list that I pointed you to is on the next slide. It is related to the 10T policy. And the 10T policy is, of course, a policy well established since 1992, the Treaty of Maastricht, and declined into a series of guidelines since 94, 2004, and then got into a regulation in 2013, developing a core network by 2030 and a comprehensive network to be realized by 2050, where in the core we want to link the nodes of the highest strategic importance and making sure that we link also major traffic transport flows and external transport flows within and outside of the EU, whereas the comprehensive network is going to reach beyond that and connect to all the regions and ensure that there is a proper territorial, economic and social cohesion. Now, these networks are very beautiful to see on the map, but what is important is what is beyond the nodes and the lines that are on that map, which is in fact the standards which are binding and the requirements that go along with each of these lines and each of the nodes. And these standards shall, of course, ensure that there is really true interoperability between of them, that there is continuity across the borders, which is often not the case. You may be surprised how diverse the systems in Europe are, and that there is a sufficiently high quality for its citizens to make use of that network. So we are addressing in that 10T policy aspects like, for instance, ITS equipment, last mile connectivity, alternative fuels, how the rail shall be provided, the rail extension shall be provided with sufficient axle loads, with speeds, with ERTMS, and so forth and so forth. Quite a, I would say, a consistent and a big piece of work that is providing also the legal background for many of the acts that are adopted in the transport field. Now we are going to revise that for November, in tune also with a new legal act for the ITS, for the Information Transport Technological Services, and for urban. And that on the next slide you can see will focus in particular on strengthening the 10T as this enabler of sustainable, smart and resilient and efficient transport system, but also in particular to look at the infrastructure quality. So if we are now going to revise the 10T, we'll of course have to look in particular at all the technological innovation that has been brought over the last years towards the market, at new user requirements and societal needs. In particular, we think about, of course, the climate change and the climate resilience that we have seen over the past years being more and more attained at a more regular basis due to wildfires, floodings, droughts, and so forth. And of course, we would like to contribute directly from the 10T to decarbonize the transport sector. But more in particular, we are going to, of course, translate into the 10T also the multimodality and intermodality that we would like to talk about here today. And in that respect, the urban dimension will be strengthened strongly. We deem to introduce into the regulation a revised definition of urban nodes, so that we have all the cities of 100,000 plus that shall also reply to certain minimum standards and shall be better connecting across the borders those urban nodes and within the urban nodes to all of the ports, airports, terminals, and really bring to life that last mile connectivity, where we very often are finding that we are not able to make sure that we use the most sustainable mode for each of the distances. So also in collective transport or in freight transport, making use of the shorter distances by, for instance, rail or collective bus transport, if it is for the passenger, or for freight transport, that we make use of inland waterways, short sea shipping, and the last mile with trucking. And of course, all of that shall be done also in the future in a digitalized way, automated way, and with all the alternative fuels that will become available over the next years. So the 10T revision will be ambitious and will prescribe to quite some detail. And therefore, I'm grateful that we have this seminar here today, focusing perhaps in this very particular seminar on the connectivity between airports, urban and other transport modes. And looking forward a lot, Munish, for the comments and the questions that we will get in order to deepen that. Back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harold. Thanks for setting the scene and giving us an insight into the policy and the strategy at European Union level on where we're heading. I think it sets the scene for the next presentation, and I'd like to invite my next presenter, that's Miriam Bohm from a wonderful and beautiful city of Aachen, to learn more about perhaps not just from the policy side, but the needs of a city, needs of the citizens of a city on what they're seeking. So Miriam, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Munish, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here today with all of you in the panel. Let me just share my slides. Exactly. So what I would like to do is just to give you a brief overview about why we as a city, of course, deal with the topic of, oh, I'm here on a, just one second. Okay. Yeah, why we here at the city also deal with intermodal transport systems and what actually we do in order to address it. So of course, you already said it in your introductory remarks, we see a lot of the same challenges that many cities across the world and in Europe especially also see. That is, we have a growing population in Aachen. I think we are located in one of the most densely populated areas in Europe. That also, of course, puts a challenge on the living space that we can provide for citizens. And with regards to traffic, this puts us with a lot of challenges. We have to provide a decent amount of parking, facing new challenges with regards to traffic management. We do want and need to provide public transport to the people. Still, we are facing a lot of congestion in the city. If you go into the city of Aachen, for example, in the winter, when everyone takes their car to rush hour, it takes a considerable amount of time more to get here and to find a parking space. At the same time, we see ourselves provided with new demands of our citizens. They do ask for new solutions to traffic problems, and they do not just want to take their cars, but they do want new solutions that they can take. And that being said, we do see already new mobility trends and innovations popping up everywhere. We have a lot of sharing vehicles. We have a lot of these e-scooters and of bikes and of car sharing here. We do hear that our citizens do demand a user-oriented solution. The expectations towards the public transport that we provide them with, they grow. It's not just about providing buses, but it's about providing a more individualized solution to moving ahead. We also can see that an increasing amount of the population desires emission-free mobility solutions, also as a personal contribution to the CO2 reduction. So active mobility and individualized mobility is becoming the backbone of urban transport rather than single solutions. And we believe that in the future, it's going to be more about having access to different types of mobility and mobility products, rather than owning a car or just having this one mode of transport that you can use. In Aachen, we have defined a couple of principles that we try to follow in moving towards intermodal systems. So as a city administration, we try to be open and draw upon the unique feature that we have here of a lot of Aachen-based innovation. We as a city are lucky enough to have a university here and a lot of startups that work on mobility solutions and that we try to integrate in the developments that we try to achieve in the city. We do have an open mind for new innovations that come, like e-mobility, that go into the direction of connectivity and generally innovative mobility solutions. And we try to do so in co-creation with, at the one hand, the developers, the innovators, but also with our citizens to see what their actual needs are and what they are looking for in new mobility solutions. We see mobility hubs and mobility brokers as a path towards a functioning intermodal mobility system. And it is, of course, emission-free mobility that is one of the key objectives that we follow here, both for inner city transport, but also for intercity transport. And we try at a very early stage to create real-life experience in the form of living labs to develop actually socially relevant new services for our citizens and to integrate them into the development process very early on. As a last slide, I would just give you a small overview about what specifically in Aachen we have started doing. So it is not just about facing challenges and finding solutions to challenges when talking about intermodality, but for us, it's also about creating new opportunities for our citizens. We have formed a couple of innovation networks that you can see on the left side, where we work together with regional experts on the topics of new mobility, mobility on demand, but also urban air mobility. And we do so together in a close co-creation process with our citizens in order to, at the very beginning of the process, create solutions that really fit the region and the city of Aachen. We see that with this process, there are new stakeholders coming into the process of mobility planning that have not been there before. That can be universities offering and developing new solutions. And this is also here, and I believe in a number of other places in Europe as well, a very creative startup scene coming up with new ideas. And also other innovative companies that develop and implement mobility solutions that they offer. They, of course, for us as a city, become new partners in the process of shaping the mobility of the future. And with regards to urban air mobility, which is one topic that we have been addressing since 2018 here in the region, this can, of course, also create new opportunities for our citizens to take an emission-free plane or air taxi in order to get somewhere. And again, talking about new stakeholders, this for the first time as a city puts us in the place where we also interact with airports when thinking about the mobility solutions that we would like to provide our citizens with in the future. Yes, with that, thank you very much. And for now, I am happy to give back to you, Munish.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you for sharing with us and our audience what the cities are looking for. And there's one particular sentence that you mentioned in there in one of your slides that stuck with me. In future, citizens will ask for access to multiple modes of transport rather than owning a car itself. I think therein lies the gist of what the needs are in future. So thank you, Miriam. I'd like to now invite Gino Baldi from Venice Airport. So we've heard about the direction and the strategy from Harold. We've heard about the needs of the cities from Miriam. And Gino, if you can share with our members of the audience on how you see an airport can play a role And then perhaps in the Q&A, we'll talk more about the challenges an airport faces in that multimodal node. Over to you, Gino.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Munish for this opportunity to discuss the topic of intermodality. Meetings with participants from different backgrounds are indeed a great chance to encourage comparison, new ideas, and the transfer of best practices among interconnected fields. Now I am going to tell you about Venice Airport. Venice Airport is the third largest Italian airport and one of the 3 Italian intercontinental gateways. In 2019, we have dealt with more than 11 million passengers with over 50 carriers and over 100 destinations. Venice Airport has a catchment area of over 10 million passengers within a 2-hour drive. But above all, Venice is a city visited every year by more than 23 million people. So intermodality is a very important topic for an airport in the long run and is an ever-evolving topic. Talking about Venezia, the transport modes are changing. Today, into the airport, we connect air transport with road transport. Moreover, specific to Venice is its location in the lagoon. For this reason, Venice Airport is characterized by intermodality between air and water transportation, which means that airplane passenger, once landed, can reach Venice by boat. In addition, we will shortly connect the air transport with the railway transport. The construction of a railway connection for the Winter Olympic Games in Milano Cortina 2026 is due to start. Venice Airport is also seriously committed to a project shared with ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, and the Minister for Transportation. Such project aims at developing and enabling a vertiport by 2026, aiming at creating a regional network for drones. There are also multiple changes underway in the field of electric cars, sharing mobility, and self-driving vehicles. So I'd like to thank Munish once again for this opportunity. Here you can find my email. I will do my best to provide my point of view as airport manager on the intermodal transport and regional connectivity. Munish, to you.
Thank you, Gino. Thanks for setting the scene from an airport perspective. You really have, all three of you have set the scene for a very interesting interactive conversation. I'd like to thank those who have already registered and submitted their questions in the Q&A window, and I shall do my best to bring them in at an appropriate time, but I encourage others as well. Please do ask your questions. So let me set the scene in terms of the Q&A, perhaps. Clearly, it seems to me that there are policies, there's a strategy that Harold talked about, the 10T strategy, about trying to connect the various forms of transport. We've kind of touched on the needs of the city, and by Miriam and Gino. What I'd like to learn perhaps more from Harold and then later on Miriam is what benefits do you see an intermodal transport provides to connect regions and how that will improve lives of citizens, perhaps within the city, such as Aachen and others, but also with inter-cities as well. May I ask Harold perhaps to set the scene and give us an overview of what benefits you see an intermodal transport can provide in this area, please.
Yeah, thank you, Munish. Thank you for the question, and very happy to give a little bit of filling in. I think that Miriam already expressed a bit what the wish of citizens is. They would like to be able to easily connect from point A to point B. And the TEN-T has been defined very much over the past as I would say, collection of networks, rail, road, inland waterways, maritime, where the last mile connections were well on the map, but were perhaps with insufficient, I would say, precision and binding effect. Because what we saw in the end now after the past years, and despite us investing into better connectivity, in particular of airports as well, is that the long-term view of both the national authorities and of the urban or regional and urban or local authorities was not resulting both in the, I would say, in the physical infrastructure, but also in the underlying data and data provisioning and services infrastructure to make for citizens this becoming a reality. So if you travel, for instance, from here, where I'm situated in Brussels, and I'm slightly on the outskirts, you see the garden, then I need to take first the local transport from my little village to the airport in Brussels, which is relatively well because the Connecting Europe facility co-funded the tunnel that brought the connectivity. Then I fly from Brussels, for instance, to Venice, and I have then a seminar in, I would say, somewhere in Ferrara, south of Venice. Then I will be confronted with what would be the best possible link. And how can I get in the best possible way my last connection, so regional and then local. And the citizen, I think, is expecting fluidity, both from the infrastructure and from the data provisioning. And for that, Munish, there is a lot of actions that need to be done, both on the hard infrastructure side with key standards in the new TEN-T, and also at the same time, standards that should be set, perhaps not in the TEN-T legislation, but in the other one that I was citing to do in the same package, the ITS, the new transport services from an IT perspective, and where you would like, for instance, to see kind of a mass application, mobility as a service, so that I can go in one app, book, find, and then also use. So I think there are some of the key elements that this intermodality shall bring, and airports shall see this on the long run, 2030, 2050. Back to you, Munish.
Thank you, Harold. Same question to you, Miriam, but with some additional input that we've just received from Q&A from our members of audience. They're interested to learn from you about the whole urban air mobility initiative in terms of what practical shape can it take? I know it's in future, so all we can do right now is to forecast, see what practical shape it can take. What kind of benefits could that provide to the citizens of Aachen, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe let me start with Harold's last point. I very much agree that about the fluidity of the booking and also of the transportation that you mentioned. And I think that's a very, very important point. When we talk to citizens, or what we often hear is that they would like to take public transport or they would like to take other mobility options, but as the moment it's just too difficult, especially if you live a little bit outside the city. So I think what we need are different modal systems, different opportunities for them to use. And it's more individualized as it gets, the more people you catch, I think, to use public transport. And the big benefit of this, I believe, is that this can be a way of greener transportation, of greener mobility for people, if it's just easy for them to choose the public option. And secondly, if I think about the number of cars that we may not have in cities or in between cities, this frees up a lot of space that we can use otherwise, that we can use for the benefits of the people living here. If it's not about parking spaces or if it's not about cars being on the streets. With regards to urban air mobility, that's of course a very wide topic of what it can do or what it could do, and I think a lot of it is still, as you said, in the forecasting, and we can't be 100% sure of what it can actually be done. What we have done here in the region is that we joined together with our partnering cities in the Netherlands and Belgium, so with Maastricht, Hasselt, Heerlen, and Liège. We joined an urban air mobility initiative that is also running Europe-wide, where a lot of other European cities are partners. And we tried to, so we wanted to jump on this train from the very beginning and see what is possible for the region, what drones and maybe also air taxis can provide our regions with. And one thing that we definitely think about is air taxis, though it's an open question what they can do, and there are different concepts. There are air taxis for maybe city connections, but I think what's a big topic is also wider or more long-term regional connections that you can use emission-free airplanes for. And also we have in this region here, we have 3 airports that are not one of the big international airports, but that could in the future be used for this kind of regional air mobility. The second thing is that possibly with these air taxis, without promising anything, without saying this is definitely going to be the case, it could be interesting to connect very remote or rural areas to more urban areas. Without maybe putting another road there or having more traffic in the region. And then I think one last thing, what is a big possibility for urban air mobility is also the use of drones for cargo transport maybe. One thing that at the moment we are very actively pursuing is the medical use case, because there we can really see an advantage to have very, very quick services between hospitals, between laboratories, but also does very good to the people, of course, if the health provision is better, if you can provide them with medication or during operations with some kind of services quickly.
So, thank you, Miriam. A quick question from Adrian, specifically about UAM initiatives in Germany. He asks, well, there's one that you guys have in Aachen, there's another one in Hamburg, and there's others in Bavaria, for example, around Ingolstadt that we're aware of. Are these connected at national level, or are these driven by individual cities? Perhaps if you could give a quick answer to that one and we move on.
Both. They are driven by individual cities, but we are connected on the national level. We have just 2 weeks ago signed a memorandum of understanding together with our National Ministry for Transport and Digitization. That's where we pledge to work together closely and also exchange the things that we learn and we develop in order to make this an effort for not just one city in Germany, but the wider regions and also more cities.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Miriam. A quick question to Harold, and I'll move to Gino after that. Harold, there are a number of questions, and I'll try and summarize those. They are under the cluster of what kind of incentives, there could be financial incentives or non-financial incentives, are needed to motivate the various different modes of transport to collaborate with each other and complement each other. And also, in this case, I think one of the members of the audience has asked, such initiatives similar to TEN-T, they've been running for a while. There have been mixed reactions, some successes, some not many. What's different this time? Could you share some views on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Munish. Yeah, sure. What is different this time is that I think with the temperatures rising above 50 degrees in the States and in Canada, the reality of climate change are, I think, evident and more evident, and will be more and more difficult to combat. So the Green Deal is, I think, something really in the heart of the policy. Now we are going, of course, to regulate in order to be in time still for the Paris Agreement to be met. But that is not sufficient. You're right, Munish, on that. We need to do more. And we have already, for the past decades, been funding from different sources. The initiatives that Miriam was talking about, for instance, from Horizon Europe. We have been co-funding 24 airports connectivities ranging from Stuttgart, Munich, Tallinn, Riga, Budapest, Sofia, Venice, Milano, all across the EU. And some of these have delivered very good connectivity, are exemplary, and some are already quite old, like Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and Charles de Gaulle. But some of them are coming up now. I mean, Brussels is relatively recent, for instance. Stuttgart, I'm going this Wednesday for the project that is ongoing right now, will be ready in 25. And others will come in the coming years as well. Riga, Tallinn, Budapest, Munich, we are now finally building as well. Some of these airports, you're wondering why they waited for so long, Munish. I mean, Munich is such a big airport. The connectivity to the national rail network is very poor. You always have to take these 70 stops S-Bahn until you get to the central station. Is a citizen willing to do that, Munish? I don't think so. I mean, they want to have easy connectivity. And you don't want, when you land in every city in Germany, to discover again, what kind of ticket do I have to buy in order to have enough zones to get to the city center? I mean, these kind of things. So we shall legislate and we shall also co-fund. We will continue to do that, Munish. So we hope to vote the new programs on Thursday to launch the calls in September. So mark this, dear audience.
So thank you, Harold. Thanks very much for providing an insight. So there's a lot to look forward to, no doubt, on that. You know, I'd like to move the focus now. There are a number of questions from our members of audience that are related to the whole management of the airport traffic, but linked in to other modes of transport. You talked about the maritime, Venice being very close to the sea, no doubt about it. Now, from that point of view, do you think the infrastructure of different modes of transport is ready to be integrated? Where does an airport stand today? And when you answer that question, please, if you can bring in your view of the vertiport that you highlighted in your presentation as well. And how do you think a vertiport with an urban air mobility and air taxi can help? Thank you.
So I think infrastructures are not yet ready for a complete integration. But in my opinion, a very rapid development of technology infrastructure for different modes of transport is underway. So I think that the digitalization can offer a great chance for the integration of different modes of transportation. Also, I think that digitalization can be the starting point for creating a safe and efficient change of services. And talking about, I see many questions about the drones. So it's a very interesting field. I can say that SAVE, my company, participated in a working table on advanced air mobility drones promoted by ENAC with some other companies. The activity started in September 2020, and ENAC, the Civil Aviation Authority, defined a roadmap to develop of the advanced air mobility. The appointment of the Milano Cortina 2026 Olympic is an important milestone and a driving force for the development of the system. The objective set for 2030 is to market the AAM on a vast scale. ENAC now is promoting the creation of a network of verticals serving the territory. Within this project, the Venice Airport and the City of Venice are particularly interested. But we are at the beginning. The first step for advanced air mobility, I think, are to define law and technical standards. The first start of this trying advanced air mobility will be for medical connection. We are thinking to use it only for this, but there is a long way to go. The first step to design the correct infrastructure is to define norms and technical standards. So we need it to plan our infrastructures.
Thank you, Gino. And while we're at it, are there any good practices, lessons learned that we can share, you think, from airports into other modes of transport and vice versa? Is there anything from an airport that other modes of transport, such as railway, maritime, or road transport, can benefit from? Anything from your side, please?
Yes, Munish. Well, we should also not forget that each sector implies a vast set of experiences which can be transferred to other sectors. Sharing best practice is possibly the best way to accelerate the growth in all transport sectors. For example, at Venice Airport, we have created and we are currently using it, a tool called Digital Twin, which allow us to make a forecast and perform a crowd simulation of the terminal. We have completed the proof of concept phase and we are now launching the product on the market. The ongoing marketing stage aims at sharing this tool not only for other airports, but also for train and subway stations. I think all this is an example of sharing experiences good for all the sector.
Thank you, Gino. A number of questions have come in from people that talk about the issues with different kinds of ticketing mechanisms to use different kinds of modes of transport to go from point A to point B. I think, Harold, you highlighted a little bit in your previous answer. And perhaps if I can ask Miriam and Harold to say a few words about this. How far do you think we are with implementing single ticketing mechanism, whereby mobility as a service, also known as MaaS, could then become a reality? So I could use my mobile phone as such and say, I need to go from Brussels to south of Venice somewhere. Give me the most efficient ticket, but not just most efficient ticket. I'm quite concerned with sustainability. I want to take the most environmentally friendly route. Where do you think we are? Could you share your views on that one? Harold first, please.
Thank you, Munish. This is in fact developing relatively quickly. You have more and more providers of such multimodal solutions that give you also your CO2 production when you are typing in. And what we need to do from our side, Munish, is to make sure that the regulatory framework is there for such private and other, even also public initiatives to flourish. We think that public authorities have a role because they are often providing all kinds of services at city level, so bus, metro, tram, and so on, and they hold quite a lot of data. But we also should not prevent that the private can come in and that this can be done in a trustful manner. And that is where we think we still need to add a bit. So we are going to provide this year still a proposal for a delegated legislation on real-time traffic information. So for the moment, our ITS directive took care of static data collection, and we need to go one step beyond into real-time traffic information. That needs also to be federated better because it's very different from the one to the other member states. So we are going to make a step change there, that the national data access points are robust, that these data sets are well defined, that they are interoperable between them so that you can use them across the borders. And then next year, we want to go in another step in 2022 to multimodal ticketing provisions. And the thing that needs to be done, Munish, is that there is a trustful environment for those who hold the data to provide them. and also make sure that they are not used by one of the big giants on earth to then dominate and afterwards take all the benefits from that. So it shall be an environment where we have learned from the, let's say, the past decade how to provide such data, and then indeed not only do it from the public side, because I don't think that will work. We shall also do it from the private side to have sufficient good competitiveness, and that citizens can then choose between the different providers, whether they are the direct service providers, so the air companies or the rail companies themselves, who do it also on all kinds of platforms or between them, or whether it are third parties who have then certain contractual links with these providers and who also can then provide these kind of mass solutions. But yeah, there is still a mile to go.
Thank you, Harold. Miriam, if I may come back to you about the needs that you identified in the city. One of the things you mentioned in one of the slides that I think we have a member of audience who's asked, and that's particularly when you mentioned that the traffic congestion is higher in Aachen during winter months than in summer months. Now that's quite interesting from a UAM perspective, because technically, other than the perception of air taxis in a city, weather could also have an impact on the flight of an air taxi to go from a city, either within the city or between a city and another one. Could you share your view on how it's too early to give a solution because we're still on the journey, as we've said a few times, but in the winter months, what's causing that congestion, and how do you think the urban air mobility will be able to help, please?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, why I said it's higher in the winter month is because I believe simply in summer, more people are taking their bike into the city. Whereas in winter, a lot of people switch to their private cars in order to go to work or to come to the Christmas market or do the Christmas shopping. I think that's why in the winter we have more problems with congestion. The question with regards to urban air mobility is interesting, of course. I believe that if we want to make air taxis or any kind of innovative air vehicles a part of our public transport system, then we need to ensure that they also run in winter under maybe harsher weather conditions. Otherwise, it's of course not a really reliable transport option for the people to take if they can't be sure that if it rains or if it gets cold, if it's a little bit windy, that it flies. Of course, there are restrictions. Of course, if it's really, really bad weather and wind, it might not be possible, and that is fine. But in that case, we need to find a way to clearly communicate, because I think the aim of urban air mobility or regional air mobility should be that people can also count on being able to take this mode of transport. What we could, of course, do is, as we're not talking about great distances as flying over sea or flying for hundreds of kilometers, is we could always provide a backup option in this intermodal transport system. So as soon as a citizen has booked or a person has booked an air taxi, but it is not able to fly due to weather conditions, we could automatically provide them with a transport option that still meets their demands. That could be a normal taxi or a train connection, depending on what fits best.
Yeah, you present a very nice view. Thank you for answering that question, because we go back to what we discussed a few minutes ago. I think what we're looking to improve lives of citizens is not competition with modes of transport, but more complementarity. And achieving that is the key. Easier said than done. Gino talked about the exchange of data to be able to achieve that complementarity as such, no doubt. And Gino, if I come back to you, assuming we do have access, and we probably can't discuss all the topics in the limited time, but at some point in time, accessing data related to transport will have some legal implications. It will have regulatory implications, no doubt about it. But let's take from a technical perspective. If we were to have the data available where the railway traffic, air traffic, maritime and surface traffic was available, how important do you think it will be then to manage a network of different modes of transport technically, so that data is properly shared, but also then used to actually take the right decisions. That if there is congestion in one mode of transport, as Miriam just pointed out, the decisions could be taken at the right time to move to another one. Do you see concepts such as airport collaborative decision making helping other modes of transport in taking those decisions, please?
So Munish, I can talk about, for example, the ACDM is a very important project. I start talking that the civil aviation has been one of the first realities, I think, to be provided with international standards. Also, tools capable of real-time flight information sharing have been around for years. And this is the ACDM, Airport Collaborative Decision Making. ACDM is a joint project between ACI Europe, EUROCONTROL, and some other airports. It is a concept aimed at improving air traffic flow at aerodromes, as airports are becoming the restricting bottleneck of the overall air traffic. The main goal is to facilitate the aircraft turnaround process, enabling the best possible use of aerodrome infrastructures and resources to the benefit of all partners, airport carriers, air traffic operators. I'm sure that this share of experiences shared the project of ACDM, share standards and a common view of real-time information can form the backbone for a new, efficient, integrated transport system with all modes of transport.
Thank you, Gino. I think we're getting to that time in this webinar when it's time to wrap up. So let me use a couple of minutes to summarize what we've learned from our panelists today. We've learned that there is strategy and policy that the European Commission is working on to move forward. The Commission talks to a number of cities, and we've had one city, city of Aachen, highlight their need. Their need is to give the citizens in future that right of access to be able to choose which mode of transport they want to go into. They don't necessarily need to take a car to go everywhere else. There is a need for, let's say, take an example of a family of 4 that's going on holiday from point A to point B, to be able to identify and book using a single ticket to go from door to door and book a whole journey, so that if any part of that journey is impacted due to a number of reasons, including football games or other crises that might occur at that time, using that single ticketing mechanism, and hopefully with the use of IT tools, they should be in a position to figure out the impact of the forward journey, the next point of their mode of transport. There is a need to do that as well. We've also looked at the need from a citizen's point of view for pollution-free environment that Harold highlighted, which links in with the Green Deal of the European Commission. There are some rules, there are some objectives that are set out that we need to, as a community, need to abide by and meet those. There are a number of challenges, no doubt about it, but I think, and the panelists agree, if we use best practices and lessons learned from different modes of transport and we share amongst them, then it's possible that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can actually do things in a quicker way. One of the aspects that we didn't get much time to talk about is that when different modes of transport bring different stakeholders talking different language in different terminology, I think that's a barrier, it's a challenge we're going to have to cross. Miriam, coming from a city, we're talking to Gino, who talks an airport aviation language, who will then talk to someone from railway talking a very rail-specific language. I think we will need time and we will need to learn from each other on how we can collaborate. With that in mind, I'd like to thank my panelists for their time, their effort, and sharing their thoughts with us. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Miriam and Gino. I think I'm sure the members of the audience will agree that we have learned something from you today. Apologies if we are not able to cover all the questions. I think we've covered majority of them, at least in the generic format. And with that in mind, I'd also like to thank all the members of the audience for joining us and staying with us and helping us share views with you. Last but not least, I'd like to remind you that on the 9th of September, we have our next set of webinars starting, and the next one on the 9th of September is one on climate resilience in aviation. So please do join us then, and then look forward to seeing you and listening to you from September onwards to the end of the year. Have a great summer and stay safe and take care. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and bye-bye.